So after a hell of a day, I woke up and got the news that I was absolutely expecting to hear. DC Comics have in fact canceled Red Hood after the first issue from Gretchen Felker-Martin, after Gretchen Felker-Martin cheered on the assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday in Utah. This is basically the only thing that they could do. DC Comics were under an immense amount of pressure, but I still don't think their words and what they've said are enough, at least not for me. And I certainly don't appreciate the way that the comic book industry is covering the cancellation of this comic book. In fact, I find it quite infuriating. Now, it was covered basically by two places, well, three. The Popverse, Bleeding Cool, and Cosmic Book News. Now, Cosmic Book News actually covers the story in full and tells you why exactly this happened. Of course, the other two articles don't, but we do get the initial statement to retailers. DC Comics cancels existing orders for Red Hood number 2 and Red Hood number 3, and any orders for future issues of the series. DC Comics will credit retailers for all invoice copies of Red Hood number 1, inclusive of copies that may have already been sold. So to DC Comics' credit, they got out ahead of this fast. They realized the groundswell that was coming against them being associated with this psychopath that was cheering on the murder of a father and husband for having the audacity to go out there and speak his opinion when invited on a university campus in America. Of course, that was his crime. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. So DC Comics canceled all the orders. They're refunding the retailers, and I believe they're also getting refunds for the very first issue. When they were contacted by the Popverse's Graham McMillan, this is what they had to say about why it was being canceled. At DC Comics, we place the highest value on our creators and community and affirm the right to peaceful, individual expression of personal viewpoints. Posts or public comments that can be viewed as promoting hostility or violence are inconsistent with DC's standards of conduct. Basically stating that there was an HR violation, that we don't stand behind what our writer has said in this case. Actually going out there and cheering on the bullet and hoping it didn't hurt itself was even too far for DC Comics. Now, of course, they didn't go out there and mention the statements or say, hey, we are completely against what Gretchen Felker-Martin said at this place. In fact, they don't really even touch it. They just talk about it very broadly. And if you go to the Popverse article itself, there's no explanation of what they're talking about. There's no screenshots of the queefs on Blue Sky. There's no history of who Gretchen Felker-Martin is and the way that they had death threats against J.K. Rowling, the way that they had characters in a book that they had murder J.K. Rowling, the way that they had in the past celebrated the events of 9/11 and praised Osama bin Laden, or even a blurb explaining why DC Comics have actually canceled the book, just saying that they canceled it with that very blanket, boring statement. But somehow that was 100 times more professional than Bleeding Cool. This is the headline that Rich Johnston ran. DC's ongoing pattern of canceling high-profile Batman books. That is the fucking headline associated with the cancellation of Red Hood, equating the cancellation of the Red Hood series with the ongoing delays for Batman Hush 2, whatever you want to call it, and another set of delays with the Joker Harley book from Kami Garcia that are being delayed because the art isn't ready. But Rich Johnston is such an enormous piece of shit, he can't actually be fucking honest about what's going on. These are the reasons that a person like Gretchen Felker-Martin, despite a history of making statements against J.K. Rowling and praising Osama bin Laden, gets a fucking book in the first place. And of course, it blows up in their face like a stick of Acme dynamite, because in many ways, the entire mainstream comic book medium has been rotten to the core. It's been infested with these nut jobs. Rich Johnston is a very dishonest individual, and he's been around comic books for years upon years. And there are plenty of people in DC Comics that are willing to still work with Rich Johnston, knowing that he will put out a headline like that, that is completely gaslighting and fucking lying about what is actually going on here. Charlie Kirk was murdered because he was willing to stand in front of people that disagree with him vehemently and give his side of the story. And because he was actually quite eloquent and he could articulate what he meant and what he actually stood for, and they could never beat him in a debate or an argument, they decided they needed to kill him. And there are crazy people in the industry that wanted to cheer that on. And now there are media outlets in the industry that won't even acknowledge what happened, why this book was canceled, and refuse to give details on what this person said in response to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it's certainly another moment where you start losing faith, in the medium itself, in the industry, because I don't know that it can come back. Gretchen Felker-Martin never went to DC Comics and said, it's my dream to write comic books. I love comic books. If you go and read all the interviews, and I've gone out and read them, DC Comics cold solicited fucking Gretchen Felker-Martin to come onto their books and write for them because they were interested in that vile individual, that monster, being associated with their brand. Where's the fallout from this? Oh, you canceled the book. Well, they can't fire the writer because they are not an employee. They are a contractor. And I bet at this point, they probably fulfill their contract. There's a senior editor that goes out of their way at DC Comics to hire the most incompetent, terrible people imaginable and brings them in on purpose. They are the ones that hired Gretchen Felker-Martin and associated this vile individual with their brand on purpose. It was all by design. There's no more dilly-dallying around. I think people have fucking had enough. It's crazy that a man can get assassinated in front of an entire school of individuals for speaking what he believes in America. It's crazy that you can't ride a bus without thinking, I might get stabbed today. It's crazy that children can't go to a fucking church and pray without getting shot anymore. It's time for a change. We can't keep going down this path anymore. We can't keep acting like these psychopaths aren't crazy and then keep bringing them in to Marvel and DC and bringing them into the fucking mainstream comic books and saying, this is what you guys need. It's been rejected every single round of it. I'm not putting up with it anymore. I've been very nice on this channel, speaking about a lot of the issues within the industry, but I also hold back a great deal because I do want to be nice while I'm doing it. I don't want to be too mean. I don't want to be angry and all those type of things. But the age of placating people and being nice is over. Fuck that. It's time for the return of the asshole to common sense conversations across every fucking culture in America, whether it be gaming, movies, video games, comic books, whatever it is, literature. Fuck it. I don't have to be nice anymore. I tried being nice for about 20 years. And look where it got all of us. It got us nowhere. And DC Comics has not done enough. More heads need to roll over this because they hired this fucking monster on purpose. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the J.K. Rowling and the Osama bin Laden stuff, I actually made a video about this creator when they announced the book saying, hey, there are enormous red flags here. DC Comics knew all of this information and kept going with the project anyway. If you haven't checked that out, the video's right here. I do suggest you watch that as well. It will add some more information about just how crazy this person is.